Okay, right, we'll make a start now, although I know people are still joining. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for joining this session. It's great to see so many people on the call. I think that's up to about just over 30 people now and more kind of coming in. So thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Graham. I work with Education Scotland. I work in our team that's all about curriculum innovation and curriculum and design. But I'm joined by colleagues who I hope you can also see on the screen just now, and I'll introduce them and ask them to give you a little wave in a moment. So we have a team joining us from the Royal High School in Edinburgh. So I hope you can see Kate and Maxine and Jennifer, and they're going to hopefully giving you a wave just now. Joining the Royal High team is Rihanna, who works with Intercultural Youth Scotland, and Rihanna's giving a wave there. The story and the partnership between the school and IYS is a really important part of the story that you're going to hear this afternoon. And also joining us are colleagues from Glasgow's Equalities team. So I hope you can see Stevie and Alexandra, and I'll ask them to give you a wee wave as well, and they're going to talk to you in the second half of the presentation. We're also hoping Kashish has been able to join us. I don't know if she has yet, but Kashish is a young person in S6. Oh, you're there, Kashish. Great to see you. Thank you very much for joining us at the Royal High. So what you're going to hear really importantly in this SLF session that is all about placing learners at the heart of what we do, you're going to hear from a learner as well. So we have some protocols on the slide at the moment that hopefully you have had a chance to read through. And I just draw your attention to a couple of things on that. Please make sure your mics and cameras are off during the presentation times to help with bandwidth and any accidental interruptions when people aren't muted. We should have some time for questions at the end, so you can use the chat facility as we go to post questions, and we'll try to pick up on as many of those as we can at the end, and there might even be time for you to come in if you want to pick up on something, to turn your microphone on and even turn your camera on and come in and ask a question at the end of the session. In the last section. The session is being recorded, so just to make everyone aware of that, and just a reminder, one of the things we are trying to do is create safer, braver spaces for people to talk about anti-racism. So this session this afternoon should be a safe and a brave space. I'm really grateful to the colleagues who are giving up their time to share their stories, and you're going to hear two really powerful stories this afternoon, but grateful to all of you for joining in as well, whether you are somebody who is already thinking and been thinking about some of this work for a while, or whether you're new to this. I think you're going to hear things that you're going to find really valuable. So I'll stop talking shortly. What will happen now is my colleague Melina, who is sharing the slide with the protocols on it, will stop sharing her screen, and Kate from the Royal High will start sharing her screen, and I'll hand over to her in a wee moment. You're going to hear a story from the Royal High that is all about really a whole school approach to anti-racist education, and it is very much in a secondary school, but what you're going to hear is really, really valuable for educators working across 3 to 18. And afterwards, the second part of the presentation is a story from Glasgow about supporting and developing professional learning to support educators, again, across 3 to 18, to take forward an anti-racist curriculum. So I'll come in again at the end, and we'll look forward to kind of a bit of questions and discussion at the end, but hand over, first of all, to the team from the Royal High to hear and share their story.
Great. Thank you, Graham. Hopefully you can see my slides coming up there, our slide from school. So first of all, it's so lovely to be here to share our journey with you that we began last year as a school, and we're continuing on with that key focus on the vision that we have. And that vision really being a process of a co-construction of an anti-racist curriculum for our local context and from our school. And hopefully you'll pick up from that just how many people are involved in this and how important this is to us in terms of engaging with so many people. And, you know, first of all, I think it's important that I share with you what our vision is for the school. And it's rooted in the curriculum. And of course, by that, we are meaning the explicit curriculum that's being taught in classrooms. But of course, that has such a ripple effect with regards to the implicit in curriculum, in terms of what's happening in corridors and what's happening out on the football fields and the rugby fields. So, really, you can see our vision that's sharing with you on the screen here. So our vision really is that we wish to create an anti-racist curriculum collectively, and that's a really important point to us, that we're doing this as a community to ensure that moving forward, all of our BPOC pupils feel that they can see themselves represented within our curriculum. Just a note on terminology, and Rihanna will mention this, I'm sure, as well, in that Rihanna and our work with Intercultural Youth Scotland has really helped us with regards to the terminology that we used. And our young people have told us that using the term BPOC, so Black and People of Colour, is the terminology that they wish us to use as a community. So that is the language that we're using. And really what we want to do is we want to make sure that they can see themselves firmly represented within our curriculum. And really, as a school, what we've been exploring over the past year is really that this work for us has the power to get to the heart of the debate really surrounding the whole purpose of education. And that is our job simply to focus in on those sort of bureaucratic measures in relation to attainment, or really, as we firmly believe as a community, that education has a powerful role to play in contributing towards the creation of a democratic society, in which racism and discrimination of all kinds are challenged by members within our community itself. And we believe that the curriculum has a really powerful role to play in this. And of course, as a community, you can justify this on many levels. You can justify it, of course, through international policy documents such as the UNCRC, which of course is becoming enshrined in Scottish laws. You can justify it through the Equalities Act, and those fundamental principles of curriculum for excellence, which of course places a huge emphasis on the development of democratic citizenship and challenging discrimination, and ensuring that all people feel themselves represented within the curriculum. In addition, of course, our whole school community has been shaped by the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that's been particularly powerful for our young people within school. And of course, it ties in totally with the principles of GERFEC and getting it right for every child. So, as a school, when we've been exploring this, you can clearly justify it through an international and a national lens, but also I think what we found most powerful over the past year is really exploring it from a local context as well, in that within our community, sadly, we have racist incidents that we have to deal with every year that our young people and their families are exposed to. We have almost 200 families within our school community who identify as BPOC. And in addition to that, we are also, of course, educating the next generation of police officers, people who are judging people based on their application forms, people who have got unconscious bias that we need to explore. So, we're not only wanting to challenge explicit racism that exists within our community and wider society within Scotland, but also, and this has been the really powerful bit of our journey, to really support our white community to move from that whole notion of white awareness to white allyship, so to being much more vocal and much more proactive in terms of the work that we're doing. And what's also been really important to us, and hopefully this will come through, is to try and make this whole process as vertical as possible. As horizontal as possible, in the sense that it's really important this is not a top-down initiative. There are real dangers and risks in this journey, in terms of it becoming tokenistic, the need for it to be done sensitively, the fear of staff being alienated by it. So, from the outset, we've really wanted to make sure that as many staff and families and pupils have been involved in shaping the journey as much as possible. And we've done that in a number of ways. And to kind of give the overview of our strategic vision, and I'm going to pass on to my colleague shortly who's going to talk through some of this. Really, all of last year, our focus was on why we needed to do this. You know, to make sure it wasn't tokenistic, we really wanted to spend time exploring with staff, and the majority of our staff do identify as white, so it's been quite a challenging conversation that Max has been skillfully leading through professional learning with our staff and protected time to make sure they understood why this was important for us. We spent a lot of time engaging with our BPOC learners, and I'm delighted that Kashish is here just to share some of that, and their families as well. So to really make sure we were listening to their experiences and their stories and what they could tell us. And in year one, that has all fed through to a co-construction, which we have been doing together, of a vision statement for what we want the Royal High School curriculum to feel like, to be, you know, to experience as a member of the Royal High School community. And what I'm going to do now is that Max is going to just give an overview of the professional learning that she was leading last year on that journey. And then she'll be handing over to Rihanna, who can give an overview of the incredible work that she's been doing with us, working with our BPOC learners and their families. So Max, if I could hand over to you.
Indeed, thanks so much, Kate. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Is my microphone working? Somebody could give me a little nod or a, yep, thanks, Kashish.
Yeah,
You've got that. Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's great. Kate has just demonstrated sort of the context of what we wanted to do and how long we sat and how much we're still sitting with the why this is so important to us. And actually, the journey probably started a little bit before this. You know, some of us at our school and within our context have had a long-standing commitment to social justice. In fact, I don't think there's a teacher out there who probably hasn't got that commitment. But in terms of a specifically anti-racist commitment, that only sort of kind of got brought to our collective imaginations in May of 2020 with the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that kind of resonated with a lot of us, that actually being sort of a passive anti-racist just wasn't appropriate any longer within our context and our setting, and that we had to be part of the solution. And so in sort of autumn of 2020, I did a little bit of searching amongst the different faculties within our school, Royal High School, and a little bit of sort of touching base on where people felt that we were in terms of our knowledge and our skills with being anti-racist teachers. And I've got a couple of the feedback and kind of buzzwords that kind of came back from that. And I hope you kind of get the sense that actually there wasn't a great deal in terms of knowledge and skills, and that was okay. So I actually was very, very open with the staff and said, look, you don't know what you don't know, and it's actually all right to say I don't know. And then that gives us a really strong basis of where we're going to go next in terms of our professional learning. So we asked questions like about sort of knowledge of anti-racism. Some people said they were confident to teach themes kind of factually, but they don't know how to do it in an ostensibly white school, where they don't know the language, they don't know what's appropriate within sort of the 2020 and beyond that context. So it was to reassure staff, first of all, that actually that's okay, but that gave us a really good baseline information to work with. And then it kind of got us really thinking that actually, as Kate already mentioned, there wasn't a point in kind of doing a rapid reaction to what had happened and putting in sort of different policies and procedures without allowing staff to really spend some time questioning their own implicit biases, which we all have, and allowing staff to actually acknowledge those and that they were okay, and then be able to equip them effectively so that they could challenge them too. Kate, could you pass on to the next slide? Thank you so much. So one of the things that we did in conjunction with RIS, Rihanna and Titi in particular, spent a lot of time thinking about what do staff actually need to know, and we stripped it right back. Fortunately, I have a background in history teaching, so we actually kind of looked at things like, where does racism in the sort of modern context within Britain, where do those biases and attitudes tend to come from? We actually looked at things like colonialism, and we looked at Windrush, so on and so forth. I'm going through that very quickly, I'm just aware of time. So it was a comprehensive knowledge session, really knowledge-based rather than skills-based session about the context for where we were as a Royal High School, but based within our context nationally, and then our context within Britain, British Empire, and all the history that goes with it. And you'll see that some of the comments that we got back from here in service, this was this time last year, was actually, you could see the big difference in how we challenged the thinking of staff members. And it was okay for them to be challenged. We said at the beginning of the in-service, you're probably going to feel uncomfortable here, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And I think that one of the comment at the bottom there, that just challenging yourself in the subject of race still isn't enough, it's humbled me a bit in the sense that it's not a short-term fix. Changing the curriculum isn't going to eradicate racism and make our young people feel safer. It's a long-term project. And that's kind of what we were aiming for. And we got, in terms of a staff in-service response where people have to fill in an evaluation form, we got something like 60 responses, and incredibly thoughtful responses where people had actually been quite affected by what we did, but we had also managed to open up a really safe space where people could come and say, you know what, I just don't know, can you help? And that was fine. Next slide, please, Kate. And so one of the things we did, again in conjunction with IYS, is we started a book group. And I know that, having talked to Payne, that this is a kind of sort of micro version of what Education Scotland are doing with their Building Racial Literacy project. So we chose one book that I had kind of read myself, and I thought this is accessible to staff. And so we went, Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. And for a school book group that ran each week, it had 25 members. People kind of dropped in and out, you know, just because of timing and so on. But everyone who participated fed back that they learned a lot, and actually it's challenged a lot of thinking. A lot of people don't necessarily agree with what's in the book, but that helped to kind of prompt the further conversations. And then that's when IYS were able to step in and say, well, actually we can help you unpick why, as white people who may feel challenged, or you know, your white privilege may feel a little bit challenged, you might start to feel a little bit uncomfortable with some of the points that are made in this book and are made that we've been making generally, why you feel like that. And that has been a real eye-opener. Our Equalities Working Group has had 20 members last year, and it's even grown this year. I can't remember off the top of my head how many this year. It's Jen that's in charge of that, and it's probably around 30. And then what we did on the back of the August in-service, because we were still kind of in and out of restrictions, it made things quite difficult. We did an equalities bulletin with different media. One of the big feedbacks from staff was that reading's not for everybody, and I kind of forget that as a big reader. So we looked at kind of putting a bulletin out there. It was just a sort of a mix of different media, so reading, clips, podcasts, so that people could kind of dip in and out of the ideas at their own pace. And that was kind of where we got to around about sort of January of 2022. And I was kind of eager to kind of sort of move things on just a little bit. And actually, again, in conjunction with the team, the decision was keep working at the why until people really truly understand this and then start to live it. Then we're not going to be able to make, you know, further progress. And then on the back of that, that's where Kate comes in, because she is overseeing sort of the staff element of creating an anti-racist curriculum. I'll pass back to Kate now.
Thanks, Max. So our focus this year is moving towards how we're going to do this. But what I'm going to do at this point is ask Rihanna to come in. Rihanna, if you're there, just to focus in on that. So Max was so skillfully leading the professional development side of the work with staff, supported by Intercultural Youth Scotland. But Rihanna's also been so pivotal in really connecting with our BPOC community in school and really creating that safe space for them to be totally honest about what their experiences have been like at school, which is something that is so important, because you have to really honestly reflect where you are. So Rihanna, hopefully, I know you've had a few internet issues, hopefully you're able to come in at this point and join us.
Oh, hello, I think my mic should be working. Thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, thank you for passing on to me. And Yeah, thank you also for asking me to speak. The work with the pupil groups, that has been really great, working with Royal High School and the pupils of Royal High School as well in my role. I remember Kate having a conversation with me about it and being like, what do you think of this idea? And I'm like, it's amazing. Like, it's a really good idea. And I love that we did actually go for it and cultivate a group of students that we thought would be just really great in terms of giving us feedback on the curriculum. So I think what really helped is that in my role as an anti-racist educator for IYS, being someone who's external as well and coming in and just being like, hey, this is my role, this is what I do. Let's try and set up these safe spaces for our BPOC students and make sure that we're there to support them in their learning and just navigating school and helping support them, but also on the other side, building racial literacy for everybody, including BPOC and white students too. So I think from having these safe spaces established, like an anti-racist lunch club, and also connecting with students in supporting them when racist incidents did happen, and through my anti-racist class that I taught as well, that led to the student community knowing a bit more about who I was and my role and who I work for. So then when we put out the call for a BPOC pupil review group for students who were interested in specifically giving their opinions and thoughts and experiences of the curriculum so far that they've learned at any year in the school, that really helped get a good number of students to come to these groups and these sessions, because she was one of them as well, and talk about the experience of the curriculum in a very open and honest way, like doing it with someone who's not necessarily a teacher in school, so that the perspective of this person is different. And there's not like maybe the awkwardness of, I've said this to a teacher and then this is how I feel, or I might feel a bit nervous, which really allowed us to like get to the crux of experiences. And I think just having those conversations with the pupils and saying to them, it is within a safe space that we're talking, and anything that you want me to share, I'll make sure I will share, and carry that out to the rest of the staff with permission from them, was really an important part of that process, because in conversations that we had, even about like extracurricular stuff, things came up from that, which was then able to feed back to staff about like the experiences of being on the football team, to then help influence and think about areas within the curriculum, even though it's extracurricular, it's still included, in terms of how we can make sure that that's accessible and inclusive for everybody. And I think one of the things that really stuck out for me as well, which I found really interesting that came out of the pupil review groups and working with these students, was that when talking about decolonizing the curriculum, something that had come up from staff, I think one comment was like just the concern about it being tokenistic, which is understandable from a point because you're starting to do this, and it's not like got the longevity of doing this year on year and more permeating the rest of the curriculum. But yeah, so that was like a point that was raised from a staff member. And within our discussions as a group, one of the pupils actually did say, there was like, understandably, it may feel a bit tokenistic, but we're starting this journey and it's something that we want to continue with consistently to decolonize and diversify the curriculum. So if we keep on doing it, it will no longer be tokenistic. I just found it so, I can't find the word. I guess the word that comes to my mind is beautiful, but I'm sure there's a better word for it. In terms of how that conversation that naturally came up in our group actually did answer a question from a staff member, which the students had no idea about. So I think that was really lovely how that fed in, and all the conversations and the sessions I had with those students, who are amazing at just being very open and honest, has really been integral to supporting the how. And I think I kind of think that's where I'll end it in terms of my bit from working with people groups. And I believe I'm passing back on to Kate right now.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Rihanna. And I mean that the comments from the pupils were so insightful and so helpful and so challenging to hear at times, with you know, I've been at this school for quite a long time and I care passionately about the school and social justice, and to hear some of the things that were still happening that we might not have heard about if it wasn't for that safe space that Rihanna created for our students was really good. Now, at this point, it makes sense to call upon one of our students. So Kashish, I hope you're still there. Are you able to join us and just to spend a couple of minutes just sharing your reflections on being part of this journey?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kashish. The school has done quite a lot, and I'm sorry it's not like, you know, they told me to say this is not one of those situations. They generally have been, it's been a huge improvement from like S1 where it was barely anything there to S6 where you have like, you know, right now we have an action plan for reporting racism. Last year, I think Rihanna mentioned there's focus groups. We had tons of those. They were really fun. Everyone was able to like talk, and there's a safe space established for everyone there as well. The racial equalities group was also a safe space, and it was just a way you can talk about things, improvements for the school, and for the school being ready to make more like, you know, racial anti-racist like change and stuff. It was very like they're very open to it. Last year, they let me host a culture week for our school. This was like with like fashion shows, like culture stalls, and like the curriculum was changed. The teacher support was absolutely amazing, especially from the art department, who created like different cultural art pieces that we sold and raised money for a BPOC charity, which should be getting sent off soon because I forgot to hand in the charity, but that's my fault. But yes, it's all doing, you know, it's all really good. The school are doing quite a lot, and I see like a huge room for improvement, which is getting that kind of filled up, and it's really, really cool. But yeah, I'll give it back to Miss Fraser just now because I don't think I'm chill enough to call her by her first name just yet.
Thank you, Kashish. That will come, I'm sure, with time. So thank you for joining us. It's really reassuring to hear that you're really noticing, you know, the difference that we're trying to have in schools. So, you know, really sort of coming towards the end of our sort of presentation and journey, we've really tried to give you a snapshot of what we were trying to achieve last year through professional learning and development for staff, through engagement with our BPOC pupils and families. We've not really had the opportunity to talk about the work that we've been doing with families, but we had two targeted events just for BPOC families to come into school, and we've also been connecting with our local mosque as well, just to work with them. And what that's all built towards is actually working together. We've been co-constructing our own visionary statement for our curriculum that pupils have been feeding into, staff, families have been feeding into. And really now, Max, you know, mentioned this, we're now into the how, so into what faculties are going to do to actually change in their curriculum. And again, Rihanna's support and Intercultural Youth Scotland has been pivotal with this, and she's attended departmental meetings with every subject within the school. Every CL or representative has had a meeting with Rihanna, and she's actually given some practical examples to include. We're going to continue with the pupil focus groups that will act in a sort of consultative role. So when faculties have ideas for their new curriculum, they can take it to the pupils and they can give their feedback on them. We've got a huge working group of staff who are keen to support this. So we're going to look at developing a sort of universal toolkit for all faculties to tap into, because obviously there's some very subject specific exemplification, but there's also some generic things. And we have a member of staff who's currently midway through the racial equalities CBD course, who's feeding in a lot of the resources that she's building up for that. And of course, we're going to continue to work with families and communities. And we're very aware that last year our family engagement, and I think we can totally justify it, was very much with our BPOC families. But of course, we want this to be a whole school community. So we're now broadening that out to make sure that all families are included. And throughout this, of course, we are ring fencing time within our CAP programme to support this, because I think you communicate so much value through the time that you really ring fence to allow staff to focus in on that. So so hopefully that's been helpful. But as I say, just sharing a little bit of our journey with you, and we're not there yet. As Rowena Ashard said, this is a marathon, not a sprint, and it's really important to take your time to get it right. But thank you very much for listening this afternoon.
That's great. Thanks very much. Thanks to everybody who spoke there. There were lots of kind of reflections and really helpful observations. I see Alexandra is just getting her slides up. I wonder if there's time while Alexandra's starting to share her screen. There's just what I think is maybe quite a quick question from Vicky Moore about just membership of the book groups and working groups, and was that entirely optional? And I think it probably was, but I don't know if Kate or Max want to come in and just respond to that.
Hi, yeah, it was entirely optional, which was great since we had such a high uptake. People, I think, after the in-service and so on, really wanted to participate and actually realised the necessity not to be a sort of a passive participant in being an anti-racist, but be actively anti-racist, and that's where we came from. So yeah, it wasn't mandatory, but entirely optional, and all of our working groups are, and the fact that it's grown this year, I think kind of speaks volumes for where people have bought into our journey and where we're going.
Yep, and what people have got out of it. Okay, all right, thanks very much. So it's over to Stephen and Alexandra now from Glasgow Equalities team.
Thank you. We're aware of the time, so we'll try to be quite efficient with our content.
Right, so yeah, so just to introduce ourselves, I'm Stevie Dolan and this is Alexandra.
Hi.
And we are lucky enough to represent in Glasgow EAL service. And if you look at the slide here, you've got our EAL Glasgow Twitter tag. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can keep up to date with any activities that are taking place with Glasgow EAL service, new resources, CLPL, etc. But swiftly moving on, we'll just go to the next slide. The content of what we're going to talk about kind of ties in with our colleagues from Royal High, which was an absolutely inspirational presentation there. Gave me a lot of ideas already. My mind's ticking. But we'll talk about the journey that we've been on in our service and how we ended up on this anti-racist journey, the partnerships that we've been working with, the people we've been working with, our learning capsules, as we call them, which are really online resources using Microsoft platforms. What's next in that journey, and we'll wrap it up with a quick thinking routine using Padlet. I'm sure we're all aware of Padlet. So what we'll do is we'll have a wee thinking routine where we can share our thoughts on our anti-racist journey. And just a wee word of warning, if you're logged into Padlet, your name will appear on the screen. So if you want to be anonymous, you would log out on your device to make sure if you want your name to appear. But that's just a wee word of warning there. We're using Padlet. So moving on to the next screen. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thanks, Stevie. And like you said, I can just emphasize how inspirational the previous presentation was. Amazing to see like-minded people. I've got my copy here as well. But I'll talk through our anti-racist journey. And it started really with a passionate team of educators working across Glasgow City Council who got together to champion equalities as part of the equalities team. Some of you are in the audience today. Some of you have been presenting during the Scottish Learning Festival. And we just want to emphasize that this has been really a team effort, working collaboratively on those resources. We then met an equally passionate group of educators working for Education Scotland and other local authorities, and we got together to collaborate and review a resource to do with decolonizing the curriculum. And that was incredibly exciting because we've realized how many resources are out there already available for educators working across different sectors and different curricular areas. What we felt was missing was something for the teachers to make them feel empowered and confident to deliver some of that content of anti-racist curriculum And that's where we came up with the idea of creating learning capsules designed to support our colleagues. We aimed to create something that was short but full of content and that allowed for reflection. And like everyone's been saying throughout the session, it is a journey. We are still on it, but we are feeling really optimistic and excited about it because the future curriculum is ours to write, and we hope to make it anti-racist, reflective, and representative of all of our learners to get it right for every child. So we'll just move on to some examples of those learning capsules. We've been talking about using Microsoft Sway, and just to mention a bit of technology behind it, Sway is a really user-friendly platform that allows to pull together different resources from different platforms, whether you're using YouTube clips or videos in general, forms, quizzes, your own slide content, and you can make it look really exciting, and it almost generates a mini website. So we'll give you a few seconds to scan that QR code. While you do that, I'm also going to thank you, Melina. You've just popped that into the chat. So this particular learning capsule focuses on unconscious bias. And I'm going to ask Stevie to move to that capsule for me. Thanks, Stevie. And like I said, it presents things really in a nice way. You can change things up, and the link that you share with your learners updates all the changes that you make to the resource. But like I said, we kind of designed them thinking about our colleagues, and they can be used in a number of different ways for self-reflection, as a catalyst to start a conversation during your DMs. In this particular learning capsule, we kind of talk about key vocabulary to do with unconscious bias. We have a lot of prompts to think of what where that unconscious bias comes from, different types of unconscious bias. And again, Sway allows you to create some of those really nice flip cards.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stevie. If we move down, yeah, we pack those capsules with a lot of thinking routines, like this one that most of you will be well familiar with, See, Think, Wonder, where you can explore some of the bias that we are bombarded with through marketing or media. And then some reflective activities to reflect on your own unconscious bias. So that's just one of those learning capsules. We are going to jump to the second one. Yes, please, Steve. Thank you.
Okay.
So the second, yeah.
God, it's fine.
The other one again looks at not racist or anti-racist, and again we'll give you a few seconds to scan the QR code. The link to that Sway popped in the chat just now as well. This particular learning capsule looks at examples of oppression and its impact on individuals, looks at circle of discrimination, how to break it, global citizenship, experiences of racism, and the difference between not racist and anti-racist. And I'll ask Stevie to take us to that resource just now.
Just that thing popped up.
Thanks, Stevie.
Back in a second.
Yeah, I think thanks. Like some of you said before, you know, teachers are very busy and looking for content or reading a whole book is quite time consuming, but hopefully with those learning capsule, we give colleagues opportunity to still reflect on their practice and the curriculum that we teach, and feel empowered. So I'm just going to, aware of the time, I'm going to zip through that resource. And again, it's there for you to explore in your own time. Plenty of video content, plenty of prompts to reflect on what's in the learning capsule, loads of thinking routines. I think this one is called, this one is See, Think, Wonder. But if you move down, Stevie, there is another really lovely thinking routine called Step In, Step Out, and Step Back, where you can reflect on different perspectives. And that's based on the video content here as well. Am I right to think we've got until past? Because I'm kind of rushing through those slides.
We do, Alexandra. Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, so Stevie,
and we can go a few minutes over.
Back to the slides. I'm just aware of the time, and I will let Stevie take over and talk us through what's next, and we will finish with our Padlet activity. Again, aware of the time, we probably won't be able to go through those resources in detail, but Stevie is going to talk you through our next steps. Thank you.
No worries. Just get this working. So following on from what Alexandra was referring to, our learning capsules, where did we go next with our anti-racist journey? Well, we've been creating what we think are useful curricular resources using SWAY, investigating different aspects of anti-racism, whether it's anti-racist movements, as our colleagues mentioned in Royal High, like Black Lives Matter, or the Rock Against Racism. Well, the origins of racism, again, as our colleagues alluded to, like with the connections with colonialism. It's amazing how we're all kind of thinking from in the same way. I think it's quite exciting. Looking at the British Empire and its impact on the world that we live in today, and create. So we've been using the SWAY platform to create these wee punchy resources. As we think, where we can find stuff that's out there and YouTube and places like that, where there's lots of amazing resources that have already been created by creative, interesting organisations to promote anti-racism. And we take them and we make them into teaching resources, whether using SWAY by creating quizzes, linking up with websites and thinking routines, and all the stuff that Alexandra alluded to. So we find it quite that you can actually create a lot of resources more or less for free, and it's just the world's your oyster. There's just so much out there. I mean, even just there listening to our colleagues, I was thinking about podcasts. I need to start thinking about podcasts and what we can find in terms of what's out there, because I'm sure there's going to be amazing stuff if we start looking. So it's exciting, and I think there's a lot of I think we're only touching the tip of the iceberg here when it comes to how we look at how we make our curriculum anti-racist, and I think there's a lot we can learn from our young people as well about how we can shape this. But we're trying to get there, and so following on from that, we'll go to our Padlet exercise as the time is running out. And if you scan the QR code there, you should take you to a Padlet. As I said before, if you're already logged in, your name would appear if you make a comment, just to let you know that. So this thinking routine is called Compass Points. It's based on the north, south, east, west of a compass. And what we're asking you to do is thinking about anti-racism, thinking about creating resources or being an anti-racist educator? What would be your needs? What would be your excitements, your worries, and next steps? So that's what we're asking you to comment on using the Padlet, and I'll share the Padlet on the screen so we can
Brilliant.
start to see our colleagues' comments appearing. Okay.
Graham has just shared the link in the chat as well. So I think, Stevie, you're good to share the Padlet window with the rest of the colleagues, and hopefully, I know that we are past the time given, but hopefully we'll be able to gather your voices and see what you think. But thank you so much for your time.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see there's still quite a few people.
I'll refresh that as well. So sometimes if you
I've
refresh
gone.
it.
So
yeah, we're getting
what we can
comments.
do is we can leave that open if you're all right, Stevie. We can leave that open for a little while just to allow people, if they want, later today or tomorrow to come back and add some reflections, because I think that would be helpful for you and certainly helpful for us as well.
Yeah, we're getting some interesting comments coming up here, Graham, already. Alexandra as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
contributions.
colleagues.
Okay, thank you both very much as well. I can see there's lots of nice feedback in the chat from both for both presentations. I'm really grateful to everybody who's spoken. These are colleagues who have been working on this for a while and have really busy weeks this week especially, I know. So thank you very much to everybody for taking the time to come along and share, and to those of you, and I think we're up to about 50 people, and most people have stayed right until the end, which says a lot, I think, as well, about how valuable people find that. And hopefully you have found something of value in that, whether that's some of the kind of reflections from Kate and Max's talk around pupil involvement and capturing pupil voice to then inform curriculum design in the school, some of the practical things there around bulletins and book groups, or something from Alexandra and Stevie's approach there that you will now have to be able to take away as well, and resources and the ideas around using these capsule learning resources to start a conversation, to start a discussion with colleagues or with young people. We have shared those, and I'll paste in the chat as well a link to the Education Scotland website on race equality and anti-racist education, where you can access the resources that Alexandra and Stevie have shared today, as well as some of the other capsule learning offers that they've produced, as well as lots of exemplification that we are working on. It is a work in progress, and I suppose I've been inspired by both the talks today to think about what's the next step for me in my journey as an anti-racist educator, and I think we know we're working with lots of people to try and strengthen the exemplification that's there so people can have more resources available to support that. It would be really helpful in that, just where you see the bits around needs and steps and worries and excitements in Stevie's Padlet, if you could populate that with your reflections, because that will help us to go on and work on this in partnership. I think Kashish, you absolutely are chill enough to call Miss Fraser by her first name. I think that I get the sense she would be okay with that, and that really kind of strong relationship there as fed into this work as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for speaking and for taking the time to prepare. Thank you for attending. We'll leave the Padlet open there. I don't think there are any more questions in the chat, but we do have a few moments before the room is closed, if anybody wants to come in, but there's time to put your hand up and ask a question or type a question in the chat as well. So learning capsules are available. So yeah, I don't know if Alexandra or Stevie want to come in, but the two links that you have in the chat there are available now and you can access, and they are, along with one or two others, on the website that I posted as well. Okay. All right, I can see lots of nice comments and thanks in the chat there. So thank you very much for that too. That's great to feedback for people to see. We will let people go. Some people I know are signed up for another session at 4:45. There is a session tomorrow on creating safer, braver spaces for anti-racism and looking at anti-racist clubs. That's at 2 o'clock tomorrow, being led by my colleague Melina, who many of you will know, and colleagues in schools who are working on that. And the national discussion in Scottish education, which this kind of, I think, will hopefully feature prominently in, is about to be launched just in about 10 minutes time. So thanks very much for joining. If you're going to another session, enjoy the next session. If you're going to have your tea, enjoy your tea. And a special thanks again to everyone who's presented. Thank you.